This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Roman Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience. Today I have with me Dr. Lynette Louise, known as the Brain Broad, Brain Change, and Brain Behavior Expert. Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, and thank you so much for sharing your audience with me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. So let's just jump into the interview. So let me hear a little bit about kind of your story. I'm sure your personal and professional tie into each other, how you ended up in 2019, where you kind of started.
I always love that question because I am in my 60s. It's a big story and it doesn't fit into an abridged question. But what I should do is write a book and title it The Story of My Life, and then or Too Much Story to Tell, and then you open it up and it says, imagine this, you're me, and you lived a great and adventurous life. The end. But all right, very quickly, I started out in a home where it was extremely strict would be a nice word. It was quite abusive, and that confused my picture because I had some weird behaviors, but it felt like it was related to my home or was, my home acting that way to me because I had these weird behaviors. It was kind of a constant circling question in my head. But I did know that I wanted to save children, and I didn't want children to have the life that I did. And that really began a very long and circuitous story of me, having children, adopting children, husbands running away because it was too much work. And my kids the ones that I adopted were multiply handicapped. So it was a lot of work, no doubt about it. And there were no answers, especially for the autism part of their challenges. So back then, they just didn't know anything, and I had to kind of sort of figure it out. So here I am. I was a little weird, and I eventually get diagnosed with Asperger's, and I go, oh, okay, so we just all have to get better together. And that sort of led me into discovering what worked and what didn't work and trusting my instincts, sometimes not quick enough, but eventually just solving each thing myself and educating. And my education is really all over the map. It was, I just got my doctorate now. I was never after that. I was always just after the knowledge. So if the knowledge I was getting in the course I was in didn't work for me, I'd just leave. And that led to 2019, a very outspoken person who's been very successful with her children and many adults around the world at this point. Just to be clear, of all of the handicapped children, only one remains challenged and at home.
Okay, yes, I commend you on that. Like we spoke earlier, me and my wife are doing foster to adopt, so we currently have 2 children in our home. So I can only imagine with that amount of kids in the home, how hectic it must have been.
Oh yeah, it was very hectic, especially when I got 3 at one time because they were 3 natural siblings and they were all multiply handicapped. So 3 at one time, just imagine it. And each one of them worth at least 5 kids. So it was really, really hectic, but also really wonderful. I love being busy. So,
Yeah, I agree. My 2 foster children, one just turned 2 and one's 3.5. So they're a handful, but a blessing. And I can't imagine not having that kind of chaotic element in my life right now.
Yeah, chaotic, but joyful and rich. And it's awesome when they're sleeping and quiet.
It really is.
Yeah, all of the great intangible things that come from parenting are worth doing.
So some of the stuff you've done professionally, obviously you've mentioned your education. How did you fit that in or juggle that with, the kids and the home life?
Truth is, that's well, first I did a couple of things that were just intense. So, jumped into courses that were intense and managed to extricate myself from the kids by getting proper daycare and that sort of thing for a couple months, and going back and forth and being very, very busy and everything falling apart and then going back and fixing it. So there was a lot of kind of jump out, jump in, jump out, jump in, which had many challenges and also probably helped me to refresh just by changing hats. So there was that, but most of the really constant educating happened distance education. So as the internet came along, then that became much easier and much more doable, and you could do it that way. And before that, it was these sort of intensive periods, and then I'd stop and start and stop and start. So I got to be a doctor at 62 or 61, I guess.
Well, congratulations on that.
I don't know. It's interesting. Becoming a doctor actually separated me more from all the moms that realized I was sort of a hands-on learner teacher. And it made me more in the other camp that is sometimes the enemy. So it's been an interesting challenge to make that work as well as not being a doctor did. I'm fortunately at an age where I'm trying to pull back and do more speaking and more book writing and all of that. So it's a little bit okay, but I actually think it was better before I got letters after my name.
Yeah, I think the journey is a lot more satisfying than the destination a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, and it just made me more on the team I'm still on their team, but they view me with parents view me with a little bit of that, oh great, she's an expert and she's going to tell us everything we're doing wrong. And in fact, they're hiring me to tell them everything they're doing wrong. So, right, so I am, but I'm going to do it from a place of love and having been there, and that they always knew before and they don't always know now. I have to remind them.
So what is kind of the process you've worked with kids and work with kids in terms of evaluating them and diagnosing them and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't do that. I'm not the diagnostician. In fact, I'm not allowed to be a diagnostician. Doesn't mean I can't spot things when I see them, but what I am is the optimizer, right? So I work as a neurotherapist, I work as a play therapist, I work with adults who have Parkinson's, adults who have Alzheimer's, adults who have stroke. So I'm not just with children, but my main or my specialty, my greatest specialty is autism, and second to that is people who have suffered domestic violence or sexual abuse. So that tends to be young people, but not always. And the process is I go to their home. They've heard about me because I did good work somewhere else, and they hire me, and I go to their home and I look at the brains of the people because I work with the EEG, the brainwave activity, and help them to reorganize how that's functioning. And then I look at how the whole family's working together and the ways in which they're reinforcing the problems, the way in which they're actually being helpful. I shore them up on that, keep that, and change the rest. And we start, and then I do the rest. It's an intensive. I'm there for 3 to 5 days. And then I fly home and be with my family. So I'm still doing that jump out, jump in thing. And then I do the rest from the internet. Yeah,
that seems like very rewarding in terms of, what you've done your whole life and just the process of working and, rebuilding these individuals.
Yeah, it's rewarding, but, you don't really look at, I don't look at it that way. I'm very in the present, or I couldn't do the job. Sometimes I'm literally trying to get someone to say a sound for 3 hours straight. So you really have to be very, very much in the present. The joy and the reward has to come from that, not, often when people say it's rewarding, they think of it like you're looking back on all the good you did. If I spend too much time with that, I won't have enough energy for the present moment. So the reward's happening moment to moment.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's also good advice for all parents, by the way.
Yeah, that is very true, especially like when I have toddlers now, that you should kind of appreciate in the moment thing, because you don't know what's gonna, happen or where they're gonna deviate to in the next hour.
Right? And they may never say thank you. So if you're doing this for a thank you, you're on the wrong train.
Yeah, that's true. So what's one thing that you've basically faced or had as a challenge, or you've seen somewhat of a personal hurdle that you've turned into a success?
I would say it's a combination of having been somewhat of a literal thinker and very blunt person. So there's a need. Let's go with the bluntness. So I was very blunt, which is often misunderstood. And in fact, everybody says if you're on the spectrum of autism, you can't lie. And it's not true at all. But you're blunt. You don't have the same filter and you don't have the same layers of sophistication for understanding when to say something, when not to say something. Your lies are very self-motivated. So that bluntness, though, once I learned to use it in a way that was more savvy, more sophisticated, is very useful, because I have to tell people in their homes, in their families, I have to say things like, well, when you use that tone of voice, you actually are causing him to have a sensory meltdown. So you probably would I have to break into what they do and say, well, when you did that, that caused this. And I need to do that. And that old bluntness allows me to. I never close that gate completely. But I need to do that with care and gentleness and understanding. And that required growth. So that's the thing that started out as a problem and ended up as a great blessing. It's one of the things I do really well, is give feedback.
No, it's really awesome. And I think kind of everything's a building block in that sense as well over time.
Right.
So in terms of tying, obviously you gave a little bit about your background. Are there any other motivations that have gotten you into the profession that you're in?
Well, getting into the profession was people asking me. Really, my motivation is now and always has been to help my family. But I also really don't like to see people hurt and harmed by the medical field, the educational field. And so I was always open to helping other people, but I was afraid of it. I didn't want to love on a child that much and then not be able to do the whole journey with them. That was the advantage to adopting them, right? And my job now, I have to love on them so hard to get them motivated and get them doing stuff, but then give them back to their families or the group home or whatever. And that I was really not sure I had the ability for, because I don't let go that easily. But I do. It turned out that, that I could do that really well, actually, by embracing the entire family and just loving them all. So yeah, I became this professional because people asked me to do for their children what I did for mine. In fact, I'm about to have a young man from Lebanon join me for 4 months because the family wants that. They want me to do for him what I've done for my kids, and I need time and I need him with me. So that's always sort of led to my profession, and getting educated was just me trying to know more.
Yeah, in terms of kind of that giving back or letting go, we're actually experiencing a permanency hearing with the 2 foster children we have now that we were hoping obviously to adopt. So we're just trying to deal with the fact that, we've raised them for 10, 11 months and, worked on some of the problems they had, and then basically sending back to the same environment that they came from.
It's really scary. It's really scary. But nobody can take away the parts you've put in. And that's kind of what you hold on to when you're at a permanency hearing, and you pray that you get permanency. So good luck on that.
Thank you. So what's one piece of advice, personal or professional, that you can give the audience?
I usually say, just trust your instincts, because too often we give ourselves over to someone simply because they have degrees. But I think what I'd like to put in here is to remember the toolbox. So when you go to a professional, let me put this in this way. let's say you think, oh, I wonder if I have bipolar, and you go to a doctor that would check you for bipolar, and that's a doctor whose job it is to prescribe medicine. Don't complain that all they did was prescribe medicine. When you go to a professional that's an electrician, you expect him to open his toolbox and pull out the stuff to fix your electrical wiring. So if you go to a professional who prescribes pills, then expect pills. If you go to a professional that prescribes habits and hard work and talk therapy, then expect that. Remember that you're going to someone that you've chosen. Look at the toolbox they have and make sure that's in alignment with what you're looking for.
No, that makes a lot of sense in terms of kind of getting everything together. And my next question is, in terms of motivation, you already mentioned obviously your family is a big driver in that. Do you have any other motivations that kind of drive you to succeed and, help and do the things that you do currently?
Well, I think the answer to that is that I only do things that I've chosen to do. So I don't, even as a child, I was very much like that. If I choose to do it, then I want to complete it. If someone else tells me I'm supposed to do it, I probably won't finish it. So, in fact, I might not even get to the middle. So I do the things I choose to do. I do what I'm motivated for already, stuff that interests me. I finish the books I write because I love to write. And I decided, wow, this would be a great book. It would really help people. And that made me so motivated that I wanted to get to the end. When I accept a client, I even set up my business where if I don't actually help them enough that they don't need me anymore, I'll go broke because I get my money at the front end and then help them for free for life. So they need to get better. And so I set myself up to always be motivated because I'm only choosing to do what I want to do. I like that hard work at the beginning. So that's where I put all the energy. And then I need them to have gotten far enough that they then take off. So that's true of everything. It's true when I do a CD, when I write a comedy show about the brain. I have a very eclectic set of skills, and I use them all, and I don't use anybody else's skills or borrow and say, okay, I'll do what you think I should do. I just don't do that. I won't.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's a lot of people lose touch with that. They do a lot of things that they actually hate and don't realize it until later in life, and then they switch professions or in general. Yeah.
Or they think that's how life is supposed to be and wait to retire. And then when they retire, they look back and say, wow, I didn't like any of my life. I mean, how sad. Yeah, no, that's not my plan.
Yeah, and doing what you love, I think those memories are even richer because you have those emotional tie-ins with that knowledge along the way that you kind of retain, and they're a little richer in terms of my opinion.
Right, and you love it, so why would you stop doing it? If you don't stop doing it, you're going to succeed at it. So that's kind of a recipe for success right there.
Yeah, and I think there's that cliche thing, if you do what you love, it's not work. It really isn't work if you're passionate about it.
Right, exactly. I was writing anyway. I was playing with kids anyway. I was fixing brains anyway. I was passionate about that since I was a kid, so...
Well, it's really awesome, and I really appreciate your time and you coming on.
I appreciate you having me on.
So let the listeners how they can find you.
I'm everywhere. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. You just put The Brain Broad or Lynette Louise and you'll find me. But my new website is brainbroad.com. But there's also LynetteLouise.com and brainbody.net. And as long as you're not one of those people who's only a fake person, I accept all friends that request me on Facebook. So I'm findable.
That's awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcast. Without Anchor, I don't think I would have ever started a podcast. It's so easy to use, and I record most of my episodes from my phone. So if you always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online. Learn more at novazoradigital.com. Until next time, all you digital savages.